Hello and welcome to In the Making, a series of conversations from North Bennett Street School where we connect with a range of new voices, fields, and perspectives. Before we get into our conversation, we want to thank the many supporters that make our programs possible, including the Massachusetts Cultural Council. Thanks for joining us, everyone. My name is Kristen Odell. I'm an NBSS staff member and host of In the Making. The 6th season of In the Making will focus entirely on crafting a business. Between now and May, we'll speak with a range of NBSS alumni and community members to hear first-person accounts of what it's really like to start a business of the types we train you for here at NBSS. Today's 3rd episode in the series and the season is very exciting for me and NBSS, as my colleague and friend, Barbara Rukowski, is opening up her knowledge bank for us for this joint program on merchandising and digital asset organization, which is something that I'm terrible at. So I'm so
that's why you're together. Yeah,
that's why you're here.
Yeah.
Administrative work is part of any business and can occupy 30 to 70% of your time. You cannot avoid it. I'll say it again, you cannot avoid the administrative part of a business. We've pulled together some tips that work for us in our respective areas, which are retail and marketing and communications. These tips are meant to help you simplify and streamline these pieces of your administrative work in order to focus on your craft and trade skill, which is really the bread and butter of your career. Yeah. I'm going to check for any questions on sound. Looks like we're good. So let's get into the presentation. Merchandising and asset organization. So I'm going to talk about merchandising, which you all know me from the NBSS store downstairs, and curating exhibitions and in the making. And Barbara works in marketing and communications right now as the interim director of marketing. And also has a background, can I say this, in museum education and sort of archival know-how.
Sure.
Right. Yeah. So Barbara's going to talk to us at the second part of this presentation about how to get a good start on organizing your digital assets. On merchandising, trying to watch the chat as well. We're good. Okay. Retail is fickle. I have certainly not cracked any magic code, and I'm not sure that anyone really has. I mean, metrics can tell us who buys what and when, but it's all based on societal trends, and trends can shift quickly with so many variables. Yes, you might grab a gadget from the checkout counter at the hardware store or your art supply store, as you can see in this chaotic right slide, but you're not going to do that every single time. And big box stores are playing the odds, and with their volume, the odds are always in their favor. For us in these small and more niche creative areas, it's a lot harder to pinpoint. I've found it very difficult in the retail store downstairs, the tool store, to count on one product to consistently sell for all kinds of reasons. Shifting trends, supply issues, changing needs, and more. So what do we focus on? Aside from excellent customer service, which is always top priority, I choose to focus on the story, the feeling, the environment. These are the things that I believe can keep a customer for life, and you really don't need much to tell a story about your brand. And to be very clear, these efforts go hand in hand with offering great products, customer service, and at least trying to understand what goods and services folks are after. So you can't get away without trying to compute what people want, but you can control your story around your brand, and that's authentic to you. So, creative merchandising, keep materials simple. You don't need a ton of fancy packaging and product, and I'm going to talk a lot about materials because I feel they are key to effective visual merchandising, especially on a budget. Cost savings of looking around you, materials that you already have. We occupy spaces that are abundant with materials. So I've no doubt your spaces, homes, studios, workbenches are overflowing with tools and materials. I know mine is, my storeroom, my home closet, everything. Tap into that for inspiration, packaging, photo backdrops, or even scraps for goodwill gifts for your clients. It's a great inspiration source. So I'm going to share some slides of ways in which I've applied that idea. A couple years ago, I came across a garbage can on wheels of a ton of veneer that was going to be chucked, and always trying to navigate vertical decorations for our expansive space here at NBSS. Something clicked there and said these would make great ribbons. So I used this trash and tapped into my network around the building. Someone helped me put shellac on them and taught me how to twist them and turn them into bows. So great example of looking around for material and using it for site-specific decor. On the right side, this right slide is showing bunting that we did for a holiday winter market decoration. Bunting is not original to me. I didn't come up with the concept, but we made it very NBSS here by pillaging the scrap bins and bookbinding and finding trash material, painting it in custom colorways so we didn't just look like we pulled, primary tubes of paint off the shelf. And it became very unique to NBSS bunting for event decoration. The slides on the left are me looking around to the sort of paste paper renaissance that's happening at North Bennett right now, and making a large-scale, site-specific decoration for a market using paste paper scraps. That was a lot of work. Wouldn't advise it, but if you want to do it, I'll help you figure it out. Favorite moment in my whole time at NBSS, which is 8 years, favorite scrappy moment is this pencil was literally on the floor, tripped on it in the hallway, and it just represents so much of what NBSS is and represents what you all do here in your coursework. It represents education, time, hard work, and skilled labor. I mean, can't you all get that from this pencil? Like you can feel your fingertips sort of burning. So it became a centerpiece of an exhibition that was, I can't remember the title of the exhibition.
Neither do I, but you did a lot of like taking notes and thoughts and processes.
Right.
And kind of revealing some of the background process that people were thinking about and working on as they're making things. And it was, this wall that is in the photo is a lot of those notes and pieces in the background.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so this came to represent so much, and I loved it so much, just what this meant to the amount of work somebody put in here, that I then did a little watercolor painting of it after it was on display in the exhibition. And I'm just sharing that because then that little watercolor piece can then become a tag on a package that you're shipping to a client, or it could become a business card, or it could be just a nice, token of goodwill to a client that you throw in a package. So these are just ideas. Trash to treasure. Another example of material all around me, the image on the left is, again, garbage that I pulled out of the trash and hand-painted text for an exhibition that was on sustainability in craft and trades. I couldn't buy vinyl signage for that because it's antithetical to the exhibition, so that was just a great use of scrap material kicking around. And then the image on the right is personal, using HVAC aluminum tape to make my holiday cards this year. Went through a lot of surgical blades for that one. Great example of looking around your desk where you're sitting. At my desk, I had stacks and stacks of vellum paper that wasn't being sold anymore. It was kept for calligraphy classes. And I have a printer, and I have the internet that found me a free online pattern for little sort of candle topper things for tabletop decoration. And those three things combined got me to this, which I still love these to this day. I never applied them to anything, but they're in my back pocket for future use. And this is an example of something that could be product or photo shoot or design for a logo. This doesn't just apply to merchandising. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, and I love the playfulness of that. I feel like you're explaining here a lot of ideas where like you're just taking time to kind of play with something, and it might not have an output or a set idea in your mind, but you're letting yourself go through those ideas and see where it takes you.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you're learning by playing around with stuff.
Yeah.
Use touch. Consider materials carefully. Clear plastic packaging is sometimes necessary or the only available option, but for some, it can be a tactile ick. Use supportive materials. Choose materials that reinforce your product and brand. They're one of the simplest and most effective ways to tell your story and strengthen your brand identity. And then using materials of the place. Read your environment and select materials that align and reflect the space around you, and we'll get a little bit more into this in a few slides. Some examples of touch. You check our chat. Looks like we're good. Okay. Packaging and gift wrap. Anyone who shops the store can tell that there's a lot of natural materials in there. Craft paper bags, craft paper, really nice ribbons. I will pause on the tactile ick of plastic. There is a need in quite a few items I sell in the store, like prints, for example.
Yeah.
I sell some prints and artwork. They kind of have to go in a sleeve that you can see through, but keep them away from our fingertips. Not a really good way around that. Slide on the right, stamped veneer exhibition labels. Again, we're surrounded by wood and materials and just really beautiful tactile things in this building. And veneer was kicking around, and it cost $6-7 to have a rubber stamp made that's at exhibitors, so that I can give these beautiful tags to an opening reception for all the exhibitors on display at the opening reception. Product packaging, woven backpack kit, and Sue Muldoon is perfectly fine with me sharing this. Sue Muldoon is just this master weaver that does a lot of workshops here at North Bennett, and she sells these very well at markets and events around the state of Mass and the region. And I wanted to sell them in the store, and she sent me a box of these, and they were, the way she packages them to sell, they were zip tied onto a piece of cardboard and then slid into a crinkly, cheap plastic bag. Knowing the way the NVSS store looks, I could not get away with that. And so in collaboration with her, I pulled a sketch from her website, or a photograph. I digitized it and traced over it, and then digitized that again. And we had that printed onto all cotton bags. And so now you have this woven backpack with all of these beautiful, rich feeling materials, natural materials that you're buying housed in another, tactile, similar bag. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I feel like you're describing a lot, like so much of the things that you all are making, books, furniture, jewelry, like it's about the way that it feels and it looks, and finding some way to kind of like keep people in that same mindset and mode as you're describing the quality of the things that you're making. And Kristen wanted to find a quality material too that spoke to all the work that Sue had put into those.
Yes.
Yeah.
Minimal brand aligned packaging. These are great ways that I go about not having to use plastic packaging. I'm taking a gamble with wrapping note card sets not in packaging and just having a ribbon around them, but I'm kind of willing to sacrifice one sample set so that someone can feel it and recognize that it's really nice quality paper, it's letterpressed, and I'm saving a lot of money on that packaging. Minimal jewelry display, which we kind of all function in that way here anyway in our jewelry program. The image on the right is a very simple and communicative way of packaging these note cards. That piece of paste paper is the color that is lining the envelopes of that set of mini note cards. Okay, let's take a pause A moment on business cards. This is a big one for me. Just some notes. Do your best to align the quality of your business cards with the quality of the materials that you're working with. There's so many vendors out there now that are printing on nice paper at the same price point that you could get something very thin. If you're in a jam and that's not an option for you, I would even advise just printing something on your home computer and finding nice cardstock or nice linen, something ivory, some sort of paper at Staples. Just something that's better than sort of a glossy, thin business card. Yeah. The reason I really hammer home on that is because there's nothing more disconnected in my mind to seeing beautiful furniture, beautiful dovetail, beautiful joinery, mahogany, whatever that material is, a gorgeous fine binding, and on it or next to it is a business card that just does not feel the same quality.
Yeah, I think we're talking about like a glossy card that feels very corporate rather than something that feels handmade. And so some of that is, even as you're sourcing things in a printer, I think Chris and I would suggest see if they have a matte option rather than a glossy, and ask if you can get samples too, if that's part of the process, and hold them in your hand and see how they feel. And depending on the slickness or the more handmadeness, depending on how you choose to work, find something that it may be the simplest, quickest option to just get something that's printed. The colors are nice, but it's glossy and shiny.
Yeah.
But there are other options out there too, and I know Kristen has some resources of other places that aren't just Vistaprint or some other, there are some smaller printers that we know in town that can work with you on this. And so, yeah.
I will say, and I didn't want to put brands in here, but Vistaprint is a really quick and easy one. They actually work on really nice papers now.
Yeah.
So spend a few dollars more to have the nicer paper if it's going to be next to your really beautiful quality material made work.
Yeah.
Don't buy 1,000 cards. Start small, because you very likely are going to change your mind about something. Don't buy 1,000 cards.
I don't think I've personally ever gone through 1,000 cards in my own profession. I change jobs before that happens again, or things change, or you want to put a different photo on it. So see what the minimum is, do some price comparison, but go for a smaller amount rather than feeling like you're going to save, because you're probably going to end up recycling
exactly
a lot of those. Yeah.
And then the basics, what to put on it: side one, name, website, email, phone number. Be discreet, doesn't have to be big. An image of a product, great, or something that represents your work. It could be a picture of a bench. And then if you choose to, one side or the other, 2 or 3 word title, description of what you do. Bespoke furniture maker, or chairs only, or something, whatever it's going to
be. Windows only, based on last week's conversation.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's my moment on business cards.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Okay, supportive materials and being of the place. Use materials that complement and reinforce your product and brand. These tactile choices ground your presentation and connect your audience to what you do. Of the place, in my mind, is any space that your product lives in. It can be your showroom, studio, trade show, your home, if that's where you work, or if that's a connection you make. For my work, think glassine, craft paper, leather, printed paper, natural ribbon, and handmade envelopes. That all of those materials are kind of this building, I feel. So that's of the place for me. Side by side of trade show booths from 2015 and 2025. This shows, image on the left is, there's no sense of our facility there. I get nothing of the benches you work on, the smell of dust, the concrete floors that we have here. And so an update that I've made over time is reveal the floors, because we live on those floors here in this building. It's pretty much the same exact floors in this venue. book cloth wrapped plinth, which references our bookbinding program. It's also a colorway that kind of exists in our facility here. And then light gray drape that also was sort of pulling from the wall colors in our facility. So great example of bringing of the place materials out into the world.
Yeah. And what else do you see there too? There's one canvas wrapped print. Those were very cheap to make. Just had the files ready to be digitally printed, but I think they were somewhere between 40 or 60 a piece for those big ones. And so that's a easy, doable piece that at least adds a little bit more personality and color to them. And they have some more texture than something just printed on like foam
Yes.
core that you're pulling up there, and had just a little bit more elevation to them.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned foam core.
Mhm.
I would much rather see in any environment that you're working in, even if it's your home, your studio, or something that you're taking to a pop-up trade show, what have you, either if you're going to print images, have them printed on matte paper, which Staples does in a matter of minutes for some of us, or as Barbara just pointed out, these nice wrapped canvases, which are not a huge investment. I'd much rather see that than a glossy poster.
That's sort of just standing on like a black easel
Yeah.
tripod, and all
Yeah.
of that is effective and it works, but I think we're trying to suggest there are other ways that don't involve spending a ton more money, just a little more internet research or some more ideas to source some other things like that and get inspiration.
Wood and cotton jewelry display. This is for exhibitions here in this building. Again, materials that we see here. Cotton book cloth, a lot of plywood. You saw this plywood that we used a few years ago. I have an arrow pointing to this lucite block only because it's an outlier. It's not really of the place, but it worked in this application, and I can justify it because we have a huge window in our center gallery, and that could be one of the touch points.
But I like that you've mixed up the materials there and you've shown a few different textures in one space together, so it's not just all one thing.
Visual merchandising and process. So Four Seasons window display, great use of place here. We have a display case window at the Four Seasons Hotel in Boston, and really of the place for this. On the left side image, I tapped into not just the place, but an educational moment in our bookbinding program where I borrowed materials and tapping into an educational moment of the first year bookbinding students learning how to foil stamp onto paper. And so this gave them an opportunity to test a bunch of scraps, and I was able to use it for decoration. And then those window display cases up in the space, you can see the gold leaf, the foil stamping shine in the window. But both of these are great examples of bringing what we see here in the building out into the world. Going all in, find a thing, zoom in, explode it. It's what's going to set your brand apart, makes it worth your energy, and bold choices leave strong and big impressions. On the left side, we do a toy project we've done in years past, based on historic toys that used to be made here. Why not go a step further and have it laying in bunny grass? Seems obvious, but it was also very efficient. The piece on the right is a beautiful cuff bracelet that's a curriculum requirement in the jewelry making program. And it has this most precious stone on the very top. It's so sweet. And I zoomed in on that and wanted to put it on top of something that is equally as precious, which is like a little poof. And I can't think of anything more precious than sort of like a beautiful velvet, sort of base for something. So this was an example of just really going all in. The last typewriter repair shop, a program that we did where the theme was typewriters, so typed a bunch of words and put them up behind there as a great virtual backdrop. If you're wondering how this would apply to merchandising, this could be a photo opportunity for your website. It could be I mean,
If you've got a storefront or a display case somewhere, as Chris has been talking about, like use these to make a backdrop.
mhm.
If you're wanting to set up a photo backdrop, if you're wanting to just make a mood board for yourself and
Yep.
get some ideas, like there's a lot of different ways that sort of curating this physical space can surface ideas about how to kind of keep those creative ideas flowing and moving too.
Yeah, trade show booth. I can see
Yeah.
this as someone renting a booth at SOA or something, like outdo your booth.
Yeah.
Functional theme aligned exhibition piece. Another example of going all in. So for an exhibition then and now, we were touching on where our facility was down in the north end compared to where we are now here in this building. And we could have pinned a bunch of maps on the wall, but we translated all of that information to an interactive, functional space where we could allow people to sit in the middle of the exhibition. So we took all those maps that would typically hang on a wall and printed them onto pleather and wrapped this table. Well, I shouldn't explain this. You all know where this table lives. It's down in the front lobby.
But I didn't know that you could print onto pleather. That was like an option that you could do. And so you did the work of like sourcing all these files with an organization that you'll mention later that you enjoyed partnering with. But it just like, I had never thought to translate that into a physical piece that wasn't just like a two-dimensional thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that because you can print onto anything. So say for your store or your booth or your little poofs that you want to put your jewelry on, you can have something printed onto a really high quality material and then have this totally customized infrastructure for taking your product out into the world. Going all in, retail store, South End. I did this years ago. Window was set up high on a busy road with no stop sign, so it had to capture people's attention as they drove by. What I want to point out here is that why are there a bunch of small things instead of one big thing? It's because I had all this material. I didn't have to buy anything. The art installation system was already built into the window. Everything was there, so it was a matter of just my effort using materials I already had and just getting it done, and it was super effective. Tap into your world, your own bank of knowledge and experience. You have so much more than you think, and you should mine it. Tap into a cultural moment, align with something timely and relevant to spark connection and meaning with your community. Tap into your immediate community. Think the Leventhal Map Center. We just talked about the map table. That was a collaboration with the Map Center at the Boston Public Library. Collaboration is usually free. Partnering with others multiplies your reach, expands your offerings, and is a powerful way to learn. Tap into your neighbors. Don't overlook the people right next to you. Support and inspiration are often just a conversation away, and we very much want to keep them in business. Okay, tapping into my world and my bank of knowledge. At a visit to the Art Institute of Chicago and in planning for an exhibition, I found these labels that you see on the left, and I loved them. I thought, this is what I need to do for this show. And after sleeping on it, I realized I know how to do this. I have framing experience. I can pull this off. So I did, and that
It just really helped to elevate them, to just give them a little bit of dimension and color. And it was a subtle touch, but it did make a really big difference rather than just having flat something against the wall. And
yep.
you can always assess whether the next time it's worth the effort to do it again.
Right.
Or whether that was a moment in time for you and it was worth the experimentation.
Thank you for acknowledging that I have a choice in whether to
You do. You don't have
go
to
through
keep
that
doing
again.
something just because it worked one time too.
Tap into a cultural moment. Big Baby and Mudang were global stars a couple of years ago. So our jewelry making program fabricated these for the winter market and sold every single set. So great example of
Yeah.
tapping into a moment and it paying off.
Mhm.
Map table again, we tapped into this network of our cultural partners with the Leventhal Map and Education Center. They kind of sourced these old maps of historic North End for us. Collaboration is usually free. Mass Woodworks in Charlestown kind of took these sketches by students and burned them onto coasters for the store. Steel Canvas Basket Corp, a 100-year-old company, collaborated on these shop aprons that we designed from the, head to toe.
Mhm.
And this is kind of essential. It can be a lot of work to go into a collaborative effort, but it gives two businesses, your business and their business, a way to test product and experiment. And cross-promotion is sort of, you need to get your messaging and brand out there any way possible.
And if it's a connection that you feel really solid about, that you know that you're in line with each other, you can see each other continuing to support that, give it a try and see
Mhm.
what it brings for both of you.
Learn to take delicious, juicy photos. Pop-up light box can be very affordable, $22, 100 north for something sort of
Get something
nicer.
really fancy, but
Yeah.
there's simple ones that will do the trick as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sunlit window is free. Sheet of paper. Yes, a huge roll bolted paper is a whole different ballgame, but we're talking small things. We're most jewelers in this space right now. Sorry, furniture. You can work with small surfaces of paper. A wall or a floor is also free. Camera, odds are you have a smartphone. If you don't, it's probably time. If it's not time, you can rent one. And then the biggest thing is your creative perspective, which is free. So some images of delicious, juicy photos. These are books for the school, for the NVSS store, that is paste paper by India Patel, and books made by Hannah Rashidi, both bookbinding students. But you can see here, they're delicious, they look like candy. I've attempted to tap into the brains of very right and left-brained people with, chaos and linear. New product promotion, delicious, juicy photo. This one I want to rest on for a minute because it hits on a few things. The product that's new and fresh are the t-shirts and the sweatshirts. But the campfire mugs on the right, just by looking at the image, you can hear, oh, there's one right there.
Yeah.
Exactly, you can hear the idea of like hitting it with a spoon and it's tin. Can't you tell that from the picture? So you can hear that. And then the blue bars on the bottom, any preservation carpenter in our community would see this image and identify that tool right away as the Svedbro blue bar, which can move houses. And then anyone in our community would be able to see this and identify these as Carhartt beanies.
Yeah, and I think what you're doing is like, in addition to a straight-on photo that really does show someone like, here's the design, here's the sizing, Kristen's also showing an example to like highlight the texture of the fabric too and give a little bit of a feeling. And so it's a both and. It's not just kind of like everything is just straight on and here it is and here's the description, but finding a little bit of a way to like capture a moment of interest. If you're someone who is using social media, this is the place to kind of like tease and let people in a little bit.
That's right.
Yeah.
Let's pause and reflect here. Refresher on the purpose of this presentation is giving you all tips and tricks to save time now, to put in some tools and practices now to save time later. Building habits and processes so that you can stay focused on your craft or trade skill, which is the bread and butter of your career.
Yeah. So, depending on the size of your business and who's working with you or not, administrative work sadly can be somewhere between 30 to 70. If you're somebody who has a long established business, you have a lot of people working for you, you may end up doing more of the admin work than some of the making, but each of you will find that balance in your own lives if you're someone who's going to be in a business as employed. But as we go from some of these really beautiful tactile things, I'm going to switch and go into like the digital world and be a little bit more less colorful and pretty.
But extremely important.
So I would say one reflection here as a question I'll throw out. Thinking about what is your digital presence as a person who owns business or works for a business. Do you work with social media regularly? Do you have a website? Or are those things that you're thinking about that you want to get going and working on? In order to get those things set up and have a process in mind where it's easy to update, you got to do some back of house work just to like keep that process going. So I'm gonna go through a couple of like questions and things to lead us through as we're thinking about file organization first. So sexy, so fun.
But extremely important.
Yeah.
Very important.
So I'll throw a question to the group. Are you somebody as a business, either currently or what you're envisioning, are you somebody who might work alone, or are you working in a team? Whether that is with a business collaborator or a co-business owner, or someone who has creative consultants, like someone who does photography or marketing. So who amongst here, show of hands, is somebody who probably has an alone business, or it's just a solo venture? A couple hands, 1, 2, 3. Okay, anybody who else is thinking about like they might have a team of people or might work with somebody else in a group? A couple other hands, and everybody else is still noodling on that. I think it. So we're kind of split here in the group. So as you're thinking about that process, that affects some of how you might choose to work the devices in your space, and whether you might choose to use something like Dropbox or Google Drive. If it's just you, you can very much get away with a process where you're taking photos on your phone, you're looking at them, you put them straight onto your computer, or you put them straight onto social media. You don't have to use Google Drive as an intermediary if you're just like running a gun and it's just you. But if you're somebody who often really needs to be getting photos to other people, using a service like Google Drive or Dropbox in addition to your phone and computer can make it easier for you to share. And there is no like standard, it's really just like what devices do you have, what do you feel comfortable with using. I myself am a Mac user, and so thinking of Kristen's photo process here, here's a little bit of like what I do when I take things. I could just do everything without having a fancy camera. So there's like phones mode, and then there's fancy camera mode.
Can you tell us in short, what different applications do you use?
Sure.
One or the other?
Yes. So process would be, here's a stack of beautiful hats. Okay, I'm going to take photos with it with my phone, portrait mode, and iPhone is gorgeous. It can do really beautiful things. I might then open up the iPhoto app and just do a little bit of like brightening or color correcting right in there. You might be somebody who has a photo editing app that you really like and might go a little bit more detailed, but iPhoto for me does enough. The phone camera is so good these days that like a lot of times even how it comes out raw is pretty great. I have a Mac laptop as well, and so I use the Files app, and it can sync straight from my photo roll right to my desktop. And so it just, whatever I can do to make that process as fast and as simple as possible saves me time. Or I could upload things straight from my phone through the Google Drive app and put them into a folder there. I would work on them if I need to email something. Sometimes it might be easier on one device or the other. If I'm pulling out my Nikon SLR fancy camera where I'm really setting up a studio shot and I need more than what my phone can do because I've had some photo training, I'll do that on the camera, pull out the SD card, and I'll work straight onto my computer in that and do a similar process.
Do you find yourself, even if you know that you need the big Nikon, do you find yourself defaulting to this just to save time? Because that's one extra step to like take the SD card.
At this point, it does have to take a lot for me to pull the camera out, just because no matter what, the phone keeps me doing minimal amounts of shots, sort of like having a little bit like a film camera in some sense, where like I'm doing a little bit of like, even as I'm shooting, I might look through the 12 photos and delete the 3 bad ones, because spending time picking your best shots is just, it takes time and part of it. And so part of that process when I pull out the fancy camera is to then go through and figure out what are the 3 shots that I'm going to edit and spend some time taking more work to do and like identifying as my hero shots, as it were. So there's some of that happens regardless, and it kind of is a little bit part of the process, but it is easier, I find, through my phone to keep myself more minimal, whereas with the camera it's easy to just keep clicking the shutter and going, and then I have to sit
and
there.
then you have an overwhelming amount
and I need
of
to take an
content.
hour and figure out which ones are the best ones. And the editing time takes longer because I'm doing that in Photoshop. But if you need a really large file that's going in print somewhere, your phone can certainly do it, but that digital camera is going to give you the biggest file possible. Most of the time, if you're just working on a website or social media, you don't need giant file sizes. But if you're somebody who might have something that's going into a magazine or on a big printed sign for a trade show or something, having a bigger file, you can do that with a camera that you either rent or that somebody, that your photographer that you're working with.
Right.
So now you've got all these files. You have to put them somewhere so that you can continue to find them through your life. So there are lots of different ways to do this, but some questions I would think about is like, are you somebody who organizes in your brain by types of projects, or do you think in years and think like, oh, okay, I remember in 2022 I did this, 2024. Some people are like that. Other people, the days go by and you can't remember, but you remember concepts of things. So go with the system that like works for you in your own mind. Something that I'll show on the next slide and then come back, try sketching out a literal map on a piece of paper, because that's what we're doing with files, is like you're trying to just draw a structure. And I would say, as much as working your phone is great, I don't think you can run a business only doing things and files on your phone. I think you do need to use a computer just to have a place where all of that stuff lives. I can't live in my camera roll and try and be organized and find what I need to find. So this same structure, what I might use on my computer, I'd mirror it on my Google Drive or my Dropbox and have that same space.
It's like a family tree for your data.
Basically it is, yes. So here, I've written out like, okay, all my admin files are gonna go over here. I'm gonna have a folder for contracts, invoices, taxes, all the boring stuff. I'm gonna have another place where I put photos of my work. Maybe I think about that in projects. I'm like, okay, chairs, tables, small projects. A folder for just ideas where I throw things that like I'm interested in pursuing at some point. Have a place where all those go so you can go back and find them at some point. And then start big and then get more detailed as you go down. Let's see. As you're working on this, it can feel really daunting to look at all of the things, especially if you've been working for a while. How am I going to take what I have, if I haven't been great about being organized, and become organized? Start with the main things. A suggestion I might have is put all of your files into an archive folder and then just work on the thing that comes up next. Organize that thing and put the others to the side and come back. And then eventually, like, you'll get to a place where you have organized the things because it's the stuff that you use the most. Curate your favorites. I would say, as we talked about with photos, if you're working with people, you might reference the same 12 photos that you're sharing to represent your business over and over again. Make a folder where all of those live so that you don't have to dig through and find them every single time. Keep a like best of hero shots and work with those. So we've made sort of a map. This is what it then translates to on my Mac computer. So I've got admin, I've got photos of work, and you see the tree goes down from there. The next thing that comes is naming those files.
This is where I'm a big fail.
So it is one where coming up with a little bit of a structure. But the point is to help it make it easier for you to search for things when you need them later. If you label everything image 3, it will be so hard to find that later.
Final.2v2.
So as we've been talking about, like, you're taking time to build habits to save yourself time later. So all of this work that you put in, it's to help your future you. There's no one way to name files. There's no, like certain industries might have a standard, but again, as with organization, you use the titles that you think in. Don't label something just because it seems like what everyone else is calling it. If you never remember to find that thing, it doesn't help you. Be consistent. Be as brief as possible. Don't have a file name that is like this long because then you can't ever see the end of that. But be specific. So if it's for a client name, put the name of that client in the file, name of the thing, a date. Dates are important if it's something that you reference over and over again, or you really want to remember when something happened, because sometimes you might, I'm sure you've seen this, you copy a file, you put it somewhere else in the computer, doesn't keep the original date that it was created anymore. You might not always need dates, but if it's something that you find that you need to remember, like, oh, this was when I finalized this quote, I put that at the end of the file name. A note about dashes and underscores, because Kristen was like, what are those and why would we need to use them? They're a bit of a holdover from kind of an older time, but especially if you're working on a website, when you upload files, it doesn't like spaces, and it gets rid of all of those and puts dashes into them anyway. And so underscores just mean that you can search exactly one-to-one for something. It's mostly something you don't really have to be concerned about so much anymore. Most systems are smart enough to understand the difference. It was a habit I got into, and so it's just the way that I think. But do, again, what works for you. It's not a have to do it. If you're really lost and you have other people, either that you're a client of or you work with, see how they name their files. And if something feels logical and organizational, copy it and do it. It can totally be something that, like, you just adopt in your own life. I think some final thoughts before we open it up for questions. Back up your files. You are only a phone crash away or a computer crash away from losing everything you have. Whether that is putting things on Google Drive, which I personally feel very confident in the ability and stability of those, or buy an external hard drive and just set yourself a calendar reminder every 6 months or something to. You could even carefully delete everything that's on the drive and then recopy it all over and let it sit for a few hours and do that, making sure that you're not accidentally deleting everything. But you don't have to spend time individually going through and figuring out what changed. I don't use like Apple Time Machine because it just takes up too much data on my own computer. And but that is there's services out there that have that. We've talked a little bit about living in the camera role, but I know a few people who really live in that space, and it can be frustrating to collaborate with them sometimes because I think it hides the size of your files, how big they are, all those kinds of things. And as we've said, you're spending time now to save your future you time later, and you are organized, you've got all your stuff in order. And remembering too that part of this is building new habits, and habits take some time. So maybe if it feels daunting to be like, oh my gosh, I have this list of a million things I'm supposed to be doing, pick one piece of it and work on that for a while. And then once that feels easier, pick another piece of it to add into as you go along.
Building new habits takes time. Let's just rest there for a second, because I go back to what we started with, which is admin is inevitable. You can't, even if you're going into service industry, you cannot get away without dealing with the admin part. And so building new habits that take time, like build new habits, but set aside the time for these things: merchandising, photographing your work, handling the taxes, filing. You really have to build that into your working schedule. There's kind of no way around it. Just commit to it now and you'll thank yourself later. One
thing, because I use my personal phone for work here, every month or so, I look at my camera roll, and if there's work and personal photos, I file all the work photos and then I delete them. And if I'm seeing only personal photos, then I have a visual cue that I'm caught up on what I need to be doing and I'm ready to go. But that is something that, like, every once in a while, because I sit there and look at my cute dog photos. But if there's like, oh, there's furniture in between, okay, I guess I gotta do some work. And so that to me ends up like, I find some way to visually tell myself that I've got something I need to do.
That's a great tip, is
Yeah.
come up with these cues for yourself.
Yeah.
The last thing when it comes to any of this work, merchandising, learning about digital, like anything that you're doing in your life and your career, you're not doing this alone. Whoever you rely on, trade with, learn from, be gracious, and share the credit. It's not only good for your soul and your relationships, it's just really good business. And thank you.
Yeah.
We want to land on this because this is a true collaborative image between Barbara and I that combines asset management and asset organization and merchandising.
Yeah. Kristen curated this beautiful spread of things, and then I like stood with my camera and tripod over it and figured out an angle, and those are Kristen's hands on the side, like literally coming in. So, yeah.
So with that, I'm going to stop the screen share, and you all, if you have any questions for Barbara or I, now's the time.
Chat too. Let me see.
And I have some questions. Tell us some apps that you use to streamline your organizational process.
Okay. Let's see here. Somebody's asking for a recommendation of where to print locally, large scale. So for those that are here in Boston, the school, there's a printing company in the Seaport called ADI Printing. They are super great to work with. You can always, with a print company, ask for quotes and pricing. Before you do something, shop around and get a couple of quotes. It's free to ask for a quote, and it helps everybody get on the main side.
I use Staples a lot. They print large scale, they print on super heavyweight matte paper, which is what I prefer for a little bit of quality.
Yeah.
So they're great and they're quick.
Yeah. Question?
You know of anyone that does traditional bespoke letterpress printing?
Traditional bespoke letterpress.
Letterpress. There are
printing.
lots of letterpress shops in the region. There's one in Inman Square, Albertine Press, that just comes to mind because I was just recently there. They do beautiful letterpress printing. Yep.
Yeah.
Apps to streamline your process.
Let's see. I think there's some things that come to mind because I'm doing video editing for social media too. So there's an app called Splice, which I use to like take all the clips from my phone and put them into an order. I use an app for making captions called Mix Captions, since I try and do that for anything that has video with voice in it so that it's accessible to as many people as possible. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot of other things. I'm just, because I'm an Adobe user, I am using Photoshop and InDesign for some of those things. But Canva is a great resource to do layout that is much easier than having to have the full knowledge of Photoshop. And I think it's become one of the main design things. They have tons of templates, there's lots of stuff there.
But this is, you're saying that's a great example of keeping your, like mapping out your digital ecosystem, keeping it small and tight, having it synced, and
Yeah.
all of that saves you this kind of ambient time wasted, which is what I do.
Yeah, it's hard, yeah.
Any other questions in this room? Yes?
Which one of us? Okay.
Go ahead, yeah.
When you edit photos, what are some of the primary things that you're doing? Airbrushing, or is it
The question
more?
is, when we edit photos, what are we primarily doing? Airbrushing or certain specific things?
Great question. Most of the time I am cropping things to straighten them out because I often tend to lean to the side a little bit when I do things with my phone.
None of us are symmetrical.
No. Often I will leave a photo and I'll shoot a little bit wide so that I have extra space to work from. But if there's a specific use, cropping in and really finding the center of the image, which this is a whole other conversation of kind of like photo composition. But Part of the visual look that Kristen is doing too is like she's cropped this photo into just the action and a minimum amount of background. I'm doing a little bit of lightening. Sometimes if the shadows are really heavy on something, there's an ability to kind of pull up the shadows or bring down the highlights so that it's not quite so hot or dark in one way or the other. If it has a person in it, Photoshop has a really helpful little like eraser for just, you know, things, but often like I try and leave people as they are too. But if Photoshop has really fancy tools, if there's like weird things in the background that you don't want, you can get rid of them. So you can go really, really fancy in another direction, even I think through phones. iPhone has some ways to like cut backgrounds out. I don't love things that have background cut out because they feel artificial to me. So I try to keep as much as I can, but those are some of the basic things. Usually it's cropping, straightening, some lightening, some balancing.
Quick addition to that, and then we'll have one more question from Emma. That's another example of think about how you're going to take that shot. Like put some time on the front end. That also saves you time at the end of pulling into Photoshop and editing out the background stuff. So just give that a little bit of critical thinking before you take the shot. Yeah. Emma, one more question.
Do you have any best practices for accessibility? Meaning, like you were talking about having captions available for photos, or if there's a way that you approach merchandising in the store, or ways just to keep expanding accessibility practices across the board.
Great.
Yeah, the question is how we address accessibility through even merchandising and the digital content.
Yes, there's a whole lot into kind of how things are set up in a website, which is a bigger concept, but mostly if you're putting images on your website, making sure there's an alt text that describes minimally of what's in the image. That way someone who uses a screen reader, it can tell them what's there. You don't have to be super long and detailed, but a little bit does help someone in that function. Same with if I'm putting a photo on social media a lot of times, because I'm someone who doesn't like to turn the sound on when I'm scrolling, and that means that I will watch the full video of it because I can read what's happening there in the dialogue. I find it's a universal design where it often helps a lot of people. So from the tech side, that's there.
I think from merchandising and tactile, you're making signage and labels that are large enough for visibility. Having everything available to touch and allow someone to have their hands on it, and then just general sort of ADA compliance in a physical space. Making sure that there's enough space around the objects and that things are safe.
For your user, There are lots of very kind of for museums specific contrast standards between the color of a font, the type, and the background, and you don't necessarily have to feel beholden to all of those. You're not an institution, but generally for those who have low vision or it's a little harder to see, having things bigger and a little clearer is useful if it's a display setting. But find ways to still fit your aesthetics into that. You don't have to feel tied to it, but those kinds of things can make it useful. Don't put like pink writing on a green background, like a neon. That makes it hard for everyone to see. And there's just more kind of like design things that usually if you're making it so most people can see, that helps everybody.
Thank you for the questions.
Yeah.
And that's our program. We're going to end there. And I just want to remind everybody, in 2 weeks, we have our next In the Making episode in the Crafting Business series. It's about buying an existing business. So we'll see you on March 12th for that one. And thank you all for being with us today.